Hello, everyone, and welcome to this discovery session titled Creativity, the Competitive Reality and the Future of Organization. My name is Irina Weisblat, and I'm an assistant professor at the Forbes School of Business and Technology at Ashford University, located here in San Diego. And I am so honored to be co-presenting today with a colleague of mine from Denmark, Dr. Frederik Hertel. Isn't technology amazing? Dr. Hertel is all the way in Denmark, and here he is, kindly agreed to speak with us today. Frederik, would you like to say a couple of words?
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you very much for inviting me for this presentation. I am associate professor at Aalborg University in Denmark in Europe, and I've been occupied with everyday creativity since the last 5 years. I started out working with creativity since we developed a new bachelor education in creativity and business innovation. And since my colleagues were occupied with the creative genius, I started asking myself whether ordinary people in ordinary jobs could be considered creative somehow. So that was why I started working everyday creativity.
Very good. Thank you so much. Again, I really appreciate this opportunity today to present this very important topic. And especially nowadays, when there is so much talk about creativity and how it affects the organizations and even our educational institutions. So let me share my slides here with you. I would just start by asking you guys, what do you think when you look at this slide? And luckily, we are presenting this as a recorded session, so you can always pause for a second and think about it. You probably think of various creative people, of course, and their ideas. You also probably think about creative organizations. Let me move to another slide that represents various logos for different organizations. You may also think about creative businesses. We live in the society where those who do not creatively innovate risk failure in many aspects of life. And the knowledge-based economy, as many call it, the current state of economy, and advanced knowledge-based industries actually force employers to change their requirements to employees. Many employers actually nowadays require that the employees think innovatively. And creativity is no longer just a desired characteristic. Employees are expected to create, implement, and promote new ideas and products. That is why the issue of developing creative thinking has been given so much attention lately. Again, to emphasize the point, it's very important to emphasize the point that employees nowadays are expected their staff to create and promote new ideas and products on everyday basis, and that's something that our students and future graduates probably want to keep in mind. Now, why creativity is so important, again, if we talk about this topic. Some organizations solve the problems of developing innovative thinking and creativity internally within their organizations. They invest in training programs for employees and build organizational culture that encourages employees to share their ideas, learn from each other, and engage in self-learning. Many scholars and practitioners in higher education have come to believe that the first and the most important step towards developing innovative thinking in their students and future employees, of course, should be taken at school. And many academics agree with that. This means that educational standards should also include requirements for creativity and analytical thinking. And educational programs should be redesigned in certain cases, perhaps to include development of creativity and innovative thinking in their curriculum. So you may ask, why creativity is so important? Many of you probably heard of the New York Times bestselling author Daniel Pink. Now, Daniel Pink says that it has been a great shift in the 21st century from left to right. And of course, he did not talk about political change, as many of you probably will be thinking. No, the 21st century, he argues, represents the triumph of our creative right brain skills over the more procedural thinking of our left brain. And another reality of the 21st century is that employers today prefer to hire people who can generate, implement, and promote new ideas, as I already mentioned earlier. And they believe that creativity is one of the factors of professional effectiveness on the job, not only in the area of innovation, but also in other areas of human activity that allow employees to solve unexpected and difficult tasks, to adapt to changes, and to make their own decisions and implement them in practice. So basically, the requirements to employees as self-sufficient people who make their own decisions for improvement and for efficiency in every day at work and in life is very, very important. It is also worth mentioning that innovative thinking is considered to be a significant factor of preventing professional burnout of employees, which is also another important characteristic of our life. And creativity is seen as a tool that helps employees actually to deal with routine work and limited range of duties. In other words, again, creativity is at the core of the future work. So what is actually creativity, you would ask? How do you define it? As images on earlier slides showed to you, probably you understand that creativity can refer both to people, organizations, or a product. And legendary thinkers throughout the time, from Aristotle to Einstein, have wondered about what it means to be creative. And there are still debates, even nowadays, on how to measure, utilize, and improve creativity. The first step to understanding creativity, of course, is to define it. And most definitions of creative ideas comprise three components. You can see on this slide, we summarize these components. First, creative ideas must represent something different, new, or innovative. Secondly, creative ideas must be appropriate to the task at hand, or some redefinition of that task. And third, creative ideas must be of high quality. That is always important. Therefore, creative response is always novel, good, and relevant. Now, what is actually the place of creativity nowadays in the modern world? Just this very brief, I would emphasize, overview of multiple publications that have been done on the subject recently, and I'm sure that Dr. Hertel can talk even more about it. You can understand that the topic of creativity is not entirely unique. There have been tens of thousands of published papers concerning creativity, along with hundreds of books. More than ever, there is a flourishing community of scholars focusing on creativity. There is an official APA journal on the topic, as you can see, one of these slides here illustrates. And the recent growth of studies on creativity makes perfect sense, given the application of these studies in multiple fields, such as education, business, arts, sciences, and society as a whole. Now, Frederik, will you tell us more about your case study on creativity and its practical results? And please feel free to tell me when I need to move to the next slide when you're ready. Thank you so much.
I will do so. This is a case study on everyday creativity. As Irina said beforehand, we have a lot of research on creativity, but one of the founders of Everyday Creativity, Ruth Richards, an American, she states that we still need or lack scientific methods for assessing everyday creativity. So that's actually one of the things that we have been focusing on. However, the main goals of our study was actually to clarify whether everyday creativity in the workplace can be somehow understood as a new kind of symbolic capital. And the reason for trying to focus on that part is that if it could be considered a new symbolic capital, we could actually also measure this capital and try to find out what kind of competition advantages that such a symbolic capital will provide us with. Beside from that, we wanted to contribute to developing a method for valuing or measuring everyday creativity. So please, next slide. We could say in general that there has been a lot of research programs on what is actually creativity, but we wanted to find out what does it actually mean to be creative at everyday work, and what role could we say that creativity plays in today's society. We have plenty of research on creativity, but what about the position or the role of creativity in today's business and today's society? That's a question that we lack somehow. So in our study, we focus on what we could call everyday creativity, or little c. And that is quite different from what we call big C, or we could also call it large creativity. That is the creativity conducted by a genius somehow. So here we focus on a team of industrial cleaners who are working night shifts cleaning in the food industry. And what we were interested in is whether these workers who experience a great pressure for developing new processes or new methods could somehow be seen as creative while solving the problems that are occurring during their night shifts. we found only one single example of what we could call radical or originality. And that is probably since that is not very common in everyday life. In everyday life, we normally see or notice everyday creativity or little c, and that is basically not great revolutions, but the way we handle and solve everyday problems. So that's what our research focus on. We could probably also say a little bit more about the case study here. We didn't, actually it was meant as a provocation somehow. We wanted to step away from what we normally study, you know, Silicon Valley or major organizations, university research centers or medical centers, in order to focus on completely ordinary people conducting ordinary work in everyday life. So that was actually what we wanted to focus on. We, at an early stage, we found out that it's probably not very easy to determine whether the product of cleaning is being creative or not. You know, in creativity, we often focus on a product and try to evaluate whether that product could somehow be considered creative or not. When we deal with cleaning, it's not very easy to say that the product of cleaning is creative or not. It's clean or cleanness, and that doesn't tell us much. So we have to focus instead on the processes and how the team actually conducts the cleaning at the night shifts. Yes, a little bit about creativity maybe. Irina, you said a little bit about this, but I consider two concepts being novel, being important when we deal with creativity, and that's actually that the phenomenon being creative must somehow be novel and original. So that means when we talk about cleaners, we need to see processes somehow both be novel and original. That must be what we are looking for when we conduct analysis of teams conducting cleaning at night shifts. So please, the next slide, please. When we talk about symbolic capital, one of the major references are Pierre Bourdieu, French. He conducted a very large research body on symbolic capital. And the idea in this study was actually to try to see whether we can develop a new kind of a concept called symbolic capital, describing the creativity conducted by everyday workers, meaning that when everyday workers are creative, they somehow produce a new symbolic capital for the organization, a capital which actually might make this organization better at the market or competing better compared with other organizations. So that was actually our main interest here. Well, we can say a little bit about the social order because that's important as well. When we talk about organizations, we also deal with the social order. And the social order is the relation between the employees and the employer. And we can talk about some kind of hierarchy. If we should be able to talk about creativity, we also need to see employers being able to have room for producing their own novel and original solutions to the everyday problems. So that deals with the social order of the organization. So please go to the next slide. And if we should say a little bit about the relation between creativity and the symbolic capital, well, the basic idea was that we somehow believe that if an organization, for instance, a team of cleaners, they are able to become creative. And that is actually a process in order to make this team work as a creative team. Then we can notice a relationship between creativity and the symbolic capital produced in the organization. So that was actually the main point in our research here. Yes, please, the next slide. Well, when we talk about creativity, we lack some kind of method for understanding what kind of creativity we actually deal with. And we developed a model by finding inspiration in the American philosopher called Charles Sanders Peirce. He talks about adoption, and adoption is, you could say, actually the combination between inductive and deductive methods. So this is actually a situation where the cleaner faces a challenge, and he or she tries to develop a theory, we could say, for solving this problem in a new and original way. And afterwards, he tests that in everyday life. So that's actually an abduction, a combination between inductive and deductive processes. Now, we can deal with three different kinds of abductions, what is called over, under, and creative abductions. Over-coded abductions are those solutions which are so easy to find that we almost stumble on them. Undercoded solutions are the solutions we need to think a little bit more about, which are not that obvious. And creative abductions are actually those solutions where we somehow need to produce something being both novel and original. So that is actually creative abductions. And this is actually our main method for measuring, you could say, creativity. So that was what we tried to contribute with to solve the problems of how we measure everyday creativity. I should probably add here that the model we use here is inspired by the Italian semiotics called Umberto Eco. Died a few years ago, but he worked largely with inspiration from Charles Sanders Peirce, and he founded this approach towards abductions, which we used for inspiration of this study. Yes, let's pass to the next slide, please. Yes, Irina, will you say a little bit about our conclusion, or should I just continue here?
Oh, please go ahead, Frederik.
Okay. In the conclusion, we of course return to the question about creativity, and you could call it symbolic capital. Beside from that, we also deal with the question whether everyday workers, or in this case, everyday cleaners, can be considered creative. In order to take the latter first, we could say that we definitely saw that industrial cleaners, they had a pressure for being creative. The main challenge they face at the night shifts is that they all the time need to come up with new solutions, reducing the time spent on cleaning. And in order to do that, they need to find new ways to clean. And that could be basically, it could be basically starting from another angle, from another perspective, and etc. Most important part here is that cleaners must avoid just to repeat what we call cleaning schemes. And cleaning scheme is actually a method or routine that you conduct, and which is basically meaning that you just repeat what you're doing and not come up with new solutions. And now to the other question we wanted to ask, the relation between creativity and symbolic capital. We don't have a very final conclusion on this, but we think that this case study shows that there is actually a connection between creativity and symbolic capital, and we could probably call that for some kind of symbolic creativity, maybe. Obviously, we need to conduct more research in this field, but this is the very beginning of developing knowledge in this field. So I think actually this is a very good start.
Right, right. Thank you so much, Frederik. I absolutely agree with you that this is a very important study in the respect that it opens so many other opportunities to look at the problem. And I hope you will agree with me then that one of the recommendations that we could make is to conduct the analysis of how creative capital is being produced and how it is exchanged in organizations. That would be an interesting topic to look at more carefully. And probably another suggestion would be to conduct perhaps a comparative analysis of creative capital in multiple organizations, not just in one. And of course, measuring creative symbolic capital is yet another challenge for future researchers. And who knows, maybe we will continue on that path in the future again. And of course, in this pre-recorded session, our viewers are not able to ask us questions right away, but we are open to the discussion, and please feel free to contact us. Here on this slide, you can see our contact information with the emails at both universities. We will be happy to answer any of your questions and maybe invite your own ideas that you have. Again, thank you very much to all who joined us in this discovery session, and especially I cannot thank enough Dr. Hertel for sharing his study and his brilliant ideas with us today. And until we meet again next time, thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for inviting me here. It's been interesting discussing this very important topic.